I come to you, I guess, in two different roles. One, as a member of the Government Industry Affairs Committee with LMA, and I've been on there for several years, back to working with Nancy before Chelsea was with us. And then secondly, I'm the Chief Operations Officer for the Bluegrass Livestock Marketing Group that operates in Kentucky with multiple physical locations and an internet remote cattle marketing business as well. So two perspectives. I'll try to stay as focused on being LMA's representative here today, but my comments will be skewed by what's going on at home as well. So LMA represents about 800 members around the country. That's 77% of the regularly selling livestock markets in the U.S. Counts with the fact that regularly selling is at least one day a week. And you know, I think in our organization we've evolved a lot in the last decade and progressed quite a bit, not only in the attitude of the organization, but in our view of the role that we play in the industry and its importance. I mean, we really are the portal for the independent livestock producer out there in the country to enter into the organized system. And we really have pushed that with our membership to try to get folks to take our job very, very seriously, because we do create that opportunity for that independent producer to be out there and have a gateway, have a doorway into the organized food production system. And that's kind of where our membership is distributed around the country. Supposed to talk about ADT implementation and our perceptions of that, and then also talk about the proposed rule on approved animal facilities. So I'll try to, some of this will be a little repetitive with Neil. I'll try to skip over some of that. Just to hit the high points with you, what it looks like on the ground level for our people. Animals have got to be identified, and I'm talking cattle here specifically in this presentation, with official ID, traveling interstate. Those animals are all sexually intact cattle and bison over 18 months of age, all female dairy cattle of any age, all dairy males, intact or castrated, born after March the 11th of 2013, and then any cattle and bison that are used for rodeos, expositions, recreational events. Okay? Lots of times what we experience on the ground level is lots more complicated than sitting in a room like this talking about what a rule ought to look like. These rules apply to animals that are moving across state lines. I'll say multiple times in here, many times when we're dealing with these animals and we have an opportunity to bring them into compliance, we don't know. We don't know. So many times we're dealing with a lot of animals and doing some things from a compliance standpoint for our customers, sometimes that we actually aren't even required to do. Animals that are being identified need to be on a CVI when they move across state lines. There are some situations where we're dealing with alternate documentation, and I applaud everybody in this room that's been a part of the conversation of utilizing existing documentation. I take great offense at statements that say we don't have traceability in the United States. I believe we do, we just don't utilize it. And those of you all out there that operate at the state level and have good relationships with markets and transporters in your areas, I mean, we pretty effectively track a lot of animals. We just don't always tie it all together and communicate and utilize the traceability we have. Utilizing our dock-in process and dock-in documents as replacements for the ownership or statement was probably one of the smarter things that's ever been done. That's been going on since the beginning of time. And we've got to have good, accurate information for those customers because we've got to get money to them. Okay? And so there is no more valuable information and no more accurate information than that. A guy's not going to lie to you when you ask him where you want me to send your money. Okay? He'll lie to you when you tell him, I'd like to take your cow. Generally, these numbers, these official ID numbers, have got to be recorded on whatever that document is. We do have a lot of animals that are moving to approved livestock facilities across state lines prior to being tagged. To me, that whole discussion is about, do you really want to track the movement? If that's the case, the simpler we make it for that producer, that farmer, that rancher, to get that animal into the organized system, and somebody, namely us on most occasions, provide that level of compliance, I think those flexibilities get you all closer to where you want to be and put lots more numbers on the board, as opposed to being restrictive and causing them to go around the system. We talked about the exception for the ownership or statements. Those animals, again, can move to an approved tagging site and be tagged once they arrive. As long as we build that process into our receiving system, it's okay. And in our facilities, especially the ones that are very close to the state lines, we do have that in place. The back tag option Neil mentioned before, I think this is a prime example of looking at an existing system that's been very effective, is simple, is cost effective, but being able to move those animals directly to slaughter with an approved back tag instead of having to apply an official ID tag. And then also one exception, that those animals can make one stop at an approved tagging site on their way to slaughter. You saw this chart in Neil's presentation. I won't belabor that point. I think it is interesting to see, the ramp up of enforcement, and I think that's good. Some of the concerns that we have and the problems that we see, and I preach and rail about this all the time. I understand, we understand that you all at the state level have individual rules and regulations that you have to go by that don't necessarily line up perfectly with ADT. And that's most of the problems that we see locally. And for us, it's Holstein steers. It's very, very frustrating for us, specifically for me in my situation, to see, a Holstein steer that's probably moved or changed hands 3 or 4 times before I get my hands on him in our markets. And I'm the guy that's got ID. Okay? To me, those animals should be, could be, and would be tagged if we had our eye on the ball and could get ourselves okay with the fact that we are attempting to build an enhanced bookend system deal like we've talked about. It's really important to get the front end. It's really important to get the back end, and that will help us fill in as much as we can in the middle. Instead, we seem to get really, really wound up and spend a lot of energy, time, and money tweaking around in the middle, tracking movements, and figuring out what needs to be on an ICVI, as opposed to putting points on the board for the guys in Congress that we talked about here just a minute ago, by getting those darn tags in those animals at home and working on the other end as well. We could get that done, but in today's environment, there's really no incentive there to force those folks to do it. And that's a huge, huge challenge for us, okay? Just the confusion of state requirements. I continue to get, I've been back there texting with people all morning, moving animals in our markets. I got a load of Holstein steers, they've got to go here. What do we got to do? And the next one is another state over, and that's a different set of requirements. It's extremely confusing. Anytime you put the words or if in a communication that goes out to farmers, you have a problem before you even begin, because it just never gets to the ground level. We're really, really struggling with those differences from state to state. It's getting better. It's getting better. We're trying hard to enhance the communication that you all put out with our customers, with our own people, to help them understand. One thing that I'll tell you, I hope that these numbers over here are not just our people. I'm sure we've probably got some people on those numbers, okay, in our organization. But I'm going to go back to where I began. We view ourselves as partners in this. We want our customers to be compliant. We want to be compliant. I don't want that complication. We understand it affects marketing, and we're responsive to that. We're easy. You all know where we are. We're in a fixed location. There's going to be animals come to our spots at least one day a week, in our situation, multiple days a week. Our doors are wide open. It's required by law. You all desperately need to help us help you with this system, because we are easy and we're going to be compliant. Don't force these animals outside of that system, okay? Enough of them go around that organized system today makes it difficult on our businesses when somebody out in the country uses regulation as a price advantage to do business with them versus us. And that creates a lot of heartburn within members of our organization, because we do try to be compliant. Folks use that. Go after those folks, because in most instances they are the repeat offenders. They're the problems. All right, I'll leave ADT. Okay, I was discouraged, Neil, by the numbers of the time. I'm actually shocked at that, but I sure hope that improves, because our perception is cooperatively I don't think that represents the job we do. But anyway, let's move on to the proposed rule, and we are in the middle of the comment period on this proposed rule for approved livestock marketing facilities. I'm just going to hit the highlights and a couple changes, a couple of things we have issue with and we'll comment about. The terminology is changing to approved livestock marketing facilities from formerly just approved livestock facilities, to try to more clearly represent what we are and what we do. That probably one of the most significant pieces of this proposed rule is changing the requirement for the veterinarian in our facilities. We're extremely fortunate in our part of the world in Kentucky. I mean, we have a dedicated veterinarian at each of our facilities on sale day every day. That doesn't exist a lot around the country. The option now is for a veterinarian to be on call, very specific language about having to have a plan in place to make sure that a veterinarian is available, not just to provide ICVI services, but other veterinary services as well. One thing that causes us a little bit of problem and will be included in our comments is moving where the agreement is located in all the writing. Today it's in the regulation. The proposal is to move it out and move it into the ADT standards. Our organization has directed us that they much prefer that stays within the regulation, not to slow things down, not to complicate things, but to ensure a process, a discussion, a thorough vetting of any changes in those regulations or in those agreements with our approved livestock marketing facilities. Okay. All of our facilities, member, non-member of LMA, we're required to do several things in cooperation with USDA and the states, whether we're approved or not. We got to let you guys in our facilities to do your work, to conduct the activities of detection, control, eradication of diseases. We're all required to provide records, tagging, movement, shipping, all those kinds of things. And we're now required to keep those records relative to official ID for 5 years. All right. Interestingly, that lines up nicely with the change in requirement with the Packers and Stockyards Administration recently, where we went from 3 to 5 years on the maintenance of records for them. So all amazingly, and as rare as it is for two branches of government to actually be doing the same thing, it kind of fits and makes sense for our people. The farm of origin issue is a big one, is a problem for us, we think, potentially. And again, back to that very core belief in our organization that if you keep this thing simple and you stay focused on the ultimate goal, the very specific, simple goal, you get there. If you start muddling it with a lot of little twists and turns, it becomes complicated and people won't comply. The exception for cattle moving across state lines untagged to an approved marketing facility only applies in this rule to animals moving from the farm of origin. And farm of origin is defined as either the place where that animal was born or it has resided for at least 4 months. The problem we have with that is there's simply no way of verifying that. How can we know? How can we know if that animal is coming from the farm of origin? Obviously, if it creates a simplicity to say he is from the farm of origin, folks, in our world, that's where he's going to be from. Okay? It's just that simple. We are concerned that we are creating non-compliance in a population of very compliant people right now. Those folks coming across state lines to our markets today walk in voluntarily, having their animals tagged, having that data collected when those animals are docked in, and we are concerned about changing that environment by adding things that actually we can't figure out what function that really serves. And we've had some discussions with Neil about that and do now understand some of the concerns. We feel like there may be some better ways to get at that, and we're going to suggest a few things. Yeah.
Just curious, y'all's position there, are you thinking this is bad because somehow the livestock market facility owner would be in non-compliance if they let someone sell that had misled the status? Because from a state vet perspective, that 4 months is good because it takes these trader cows out that one day before were somewhere else in 50 lots and they're accumulated, and it would force them to ID prior to coming to your market.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, is your concern that somehow y'all believe as an organization the sale barn owner would get in trouble for that?
Well, no, I'm not worried about getting in trouble. Our job's pretty simple. What I'm worried about is collecting bad information for you guys. Today, I think the information that we collect is accurate, good. Now, I don't know, and I know that's the situation. And we had this discussion last week about those trader cows. Okay. Today, when that cow shows up, if she happens to show up at one of ours, I'm collecting who's going to get paid for that cow, where she came from, ID, all those kinds of things are getting collected. And he's got no reason to tell me anything that's not the truth. I'm concerned that if we add, and we've had this voiced more from other parts of the country than from our part of the country, if we start adding requirements in there for things that we cannot verify, then I'm collecting bad information based on our forcing him to be non-compliant. And it's a complicated issue. We just feel like the simpler we keep it, the more straightforward we keep it, the better the information is that we're going to have for you guys to look at. Okay. Existing documents can be used. We talked about the dock-in process there a while ago. As long as that information is collected as soon as those animals step off the mode of transportation. We were also asked, this final item down here, about does there need to be guidance in this regulation for the location of bag tags? And we've had a pretty robust discussion within the organization, within LMA, about this. And like many issues, you come up with different answers depending on where you live and what the environment is. What we have said is that it probably doesn't need to be in the regulation because there does need to be room for common sense. What we need to be focused on is continuing to do a good job of educating people about putting them in places where they will stay where we put them and putting them in places where they can be easily read. Dictating where that particular spot is probably a mistake because that may not be the right spot for all situations. And that's kind of where we are. Finally, I'll end on this slide. There are several responsibilities for livestock markets. I'm not going to read through all that. There's a couple of them I want to make a couple points to you because I think it's important to do this. A lot of language in here about ensuring that the veterinarian is available to provide regulatory services to customers on both sides, and we do that today. I see no reason why that's going to change. and we don't have any issues with how that is in the rule. There are a couple things in here, though, that do, to us, create some perceptions that need to be clarified. 2, may not sell livestock to out-of-state buyers or allow the animals to move to interstate destinations, okay? Unless you've got an accredited veterinarian to complete ICVIs, okay? Shall see that buyers and consignors are aware of ICVI requirements. And then the 4th one, shall see that the accredited veterinarian is advised of livestock being moved interstate or that need an ICVI. Folks, we don't know that. We don't know those things. In an auction market, it's extremely rare for us to know where those animals are going to go. Now, I'm hugely encouraged by the portal that's being worked on. We were big advocates of that. There needs to be a simple way for somebody to go to a computer and say, I have an 800-pound, 12-month-old Holstein steer, and I need to go here with him. What do I got to do? That needs to happen. We don't know where these animals are going, and by the very nature of the role we play in the industry, we shouldn't know. Okay? We have commercial order buyers, internet buyers that have customer bases scattered all around the country. It's not our business to know their business. It's our business to do good business with them and protect the farmers. It's not our business to know where those cattle are going to go. They have to be compliant. We have to create an environment where they can be compliant and provide those services, but ultimately they have that responsibility, not the market. Okay? It's impossible for us to do that. The concern that we have, and we will very specifically address those in our comments, we are concerned about creating the perception that we do indeed have that information when we don't. Okay? That's pretty important. Many times the people buying these animals in our auction markets don't necessarily know where those animals are going. Okay? And I know that blows a lot of people's minds, but there's a lot of speculation that goes on in the bigger cattle market. Through these order buyer and brokerage companies, there's lots of them that they don't know ultimately where they're going when they actually are loaded on a truck. Okay? So we need to create an environment where those things can happen and we can record movement, we can record identification, but I don't want to create a perception that there's more information there than it actually exists.